Hey, so today we're going to be working on a around 1,200 square foot unit. What we're going to be doing is the people, they pulled up the carpeting and left a lot of adhesives all over the floor. Most of the adhesives are up, but what we're going to do is we're going to do a diamond grind across the floor and then also get up all of the adhesives out of the expansion joints and fill the expansion joints. What we're also going to do is we are going to grind the floor down, but this particular slab has, this slab has fiberglass in it, and after the grind what we're going to do is we're going to go through and sand the floor to remove any of those fiberglass hairs that will stick up out of the sealer. Even if you like paste them down with the sealer, which would look pretty awful, it would also just make the floor completely not smooth and awful looking. So we're going to remove all of those fiberglass hairs that will be exposed from the grinding process, and then after that do a thorough cleaning, and then we're going to seal it with a matte finish sealer. So we're going to be using the barrier matte finish version, and that has a nice slip resistance to it for this commercial space and holds up really well. So we're going to be putting 3 coats down today. So let's go ahead and get started. So these adhesives are gooped up underneath the wall. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to scrape those out as I'm putting the masking, and you can see them right here. You can hear my footprints. Sticky feet with these adhesives. So we're going to go ahead and get all of those out from underneath the wall because we don't want those sticking to the sealer as we roll it out, and then get this masking up. We're going to go ahead and clean out these expansion joints. Let's get started. So I'm going to go ahead and put those expansion joints on hold for right now and start up with the grinding. This particular slab is really hard, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to weight my machine with about 75 pounds of weights and 6 70 grit diamond pads. Let's check those out. Okay, day 2. So yesterday wasn't super productive. I did add in a little bit of extra time to strip the floors here. And the grinding is actually going really fast considering how hard this slab is. Unfortunately, what's taking forever is these expansion joints that are filled with this adhesive from the carpet that they pulled up. Now luckily, the owner of the place got up most of the adhesives, even though you could hear as I walk, the floor is still pretty sticky. It's kind of gross. But these are just taking forever to get out of here. And there's some parts that come up really fast and then others that are just taking forever. So unfortunately, hopefully we could get it wrapped up in 3 days. That would be a little ahead of schedule. 4 days will probably end up being to what it will take to, clean up all the floors, grind them, sand them to get up all of the fiberglass hairs out of the floor, clean the floors, and put down the Credo deep penetrating sealer to permanently waterproof the slab and to push out any residual moisture that might be in here, because it's winter time. It's pretty darn cold outside, and you could even see certain areas like right here where overnight that moisture is still in the concrete. And it's still in there, and it's going to continue to be in there until I put the DPS down. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started and picking out some adhesives. Sounds like fun. So it's taken hours to remove all of these adhesives through out of the expansion joints, and it has not been pleasant. Luckily, I found a little way to do it using the straight razor blade, box cutter style blade, and just a pair of pliers, some needle nose pliers. So let me show you how I was able to do this fairly quickly. Still taking forever, but let's check it out. So this has not been fun, but what I found is that you kind of drag the blade through here, right on the edge, and that loosens it up if it's not too deep. The frustrating part is that we don't want to add any extra floor strippers or anything to soften it up. It's actually seems like it's almost harder to get out when it's soft. So just by cutting it out like this, seems to be working fairly well, even though it's kind of taken forever. But I'll tell you, stripping floors is the most time-consuming thing that I do. And every adhesive and sealer, whatever's on the floor, none of them come up in a consistent manner. Every single one you have to evaluate on a job-to-job basis. So by cutting that out, and then I just take my multi-tool pliers and seems to pull out fairly well. I want to make sure that I'm clearing out the joints really well though, which is also taking a lot of time, because we're going to be filling them, and you don't want them all gooped up, or else the fill will not adhere to the side walls of the concrete inside of the joint. So, you really need to do a good job removing this stuff, and that's what's taking forever. Now, you could get up a decent amount of it fairly quick, but to really clean out the joints, you have to spend a little more time scraping those edges. This takes forever. As you can see, you get chunks that just want to stick in no matter what. I really like this blade because it's very, very narrow. Works pretty well. I've only used about 1,412 razor blades so far today, so we're in good shape. I bought them at Costco. I just had them put a whole pallet. They just backed up to the loading dock and they loaded up a pallet of razor blades for this. It's been working out well. Okay, so we're on the final day of prep here. Oh wow, today's going to be a busy day. So first off, we are going to fill all these expansion joints, and I will talk about that in a moment. We got a couple spots over here of concrete to still grind. Then we are going to sand all the floors to remove the fiberglass hairs, then clean the entire floor, and then go through and apply our Credo DPS, and I'll explain more about that later. So first off, what I did is go and mark any divots that are in the ground so I could fill those along with the expansion joints. Next, I'm going to be putting some backer rod into the expansion joints, which is just a type of foam that will go into the joint and allow the filler to kind of float on top of this. So you're not using up too much product and it gives it a little more give. So I'm just putting it in by hand. And then with this handy dandy thing, I'll show you in a moment, that's what we're going to use to push it into the joint. Now, I had a video or a reel on Instagram go viral recently with like 100,000 views or something crazy. And I got a lot of negative feedback from people in our industry, which was a little curious, but you know, Instagram is not the most nuanced platform. You know, with a 15-second video, you know, I'm not going to sit there and try to explain something. You know, it's all about just showing the process. So people were saying, oh, why are you using a cement-based filler? Oh, you're doing this wrong and stuff. And I'll explain how I personally, why I use this. So in general, I use the epoxy fills or polyaspartic fills. There's some companies I order from, but ever since COVID, those companies now have like a couple week lead time on a lot of these products. Unfortunately, here in the Treasure Valley, the concrete store that I go to does not carry any of these products and have it in stock. So that means that there's a couple week lead time anytime I'm ordering one of these products, which is a little frustrating. Oh, see that popped? So let's try to squeeze that in there. Pulling it a little tight because the expansion joint gets narrower towards this wall. And I think I'll just leave that empty. So this client kind of threw it at me kind of late that he wanted this done pretty much the day that I was starting. So I did not have time to go in and order some of the epoxy fills that I would usually use. Another thing is that they're pretty darn expensive. I'm not gonna lie, they are, you know, maybe like $100 a tube or something. So just to do this full like 1,200 square feet would probably be close to anywhere between, you know, $200 to $500 in product. I would probably say like 300 would be realistic, but like $200 to $500 in product, which is pretty darn expensive and would have taken this whole project over budget. So this backer rod is pretty cheap, and the cement-based fill I'm going to use is pretty cheap as well. You could just get a big old bag of it. My personal favorite is the Mapei Quick Patch. I use it a lot on driveways and other decks and stuff like that, so it holds up really well. And I'll explain a little later how the Credo DPS hardens it as well. So it really strengthens it, and it makes it a really good filling product. Now, you know, with the epoxy fills, this is what kind of gets me, is that it's really expensive, and it does leave. So this is the thing, this is the most important thing that you want to have when you're applying this stuff. These things are great to get that backer rod into the joint. So anyways, by using an epoxy or polyaspartic fill, it's still completely solid and does not have a give like a polyurethane. So eventually it will crack out of these joints, because these joints are in there for a reason, for when the concrete settles over time, that it cracks at the joint and not through the slab. So if you have an epoxy in there or a cement-based fill, both of them are going to crack at the same rate. Okay? Now the epoxy fills do look a little better. I'm not going to lie, they're smoother and match the sheen of the concrete a little better. But you know, if it's using that product or using this, you know, I mean, it's and it's hundreds of dollars more. It might just be easier to go through and just use a cement-based fill. Another thing is that the cement-based fills, besides being able to get them locally, you don't have to go in and do a diamond grind after. So traditionally with the epoxy joint fillers, you're going to fill and then you're going to go through and then diamond grind over it to remove any of the residue because it stains the top of the concrete. And you have to do a diamond grind afterwards. You could use a cement-based fill even when you're just doing a light sanding on the concrete, which is great. So you could just go through and sand off any of the residue and you don't have to do a diamond grind. That right there is a big deal. So I'm pretty much done. I diamond grinded all of these areas already, so I don't have to go in and diamond grind again. I have to sand the whole floor anyway. So when I'm going through and I'm sanding this floor, it's going to remove any of that residue from the cement-based fill. And I was able to keep the project in the budget that the client wanted me to. So both of those are pluses. And like I said, it holds up just as good as any epoxy fill, but for this particular job, I was able to stay in the budget and also stay in the time frame, which was a big thing, because if I had to order that product last minute, it would have set this whole project back weeks, and that just was not an option for the client. So if you see, this is a little thinner than peanut butter consistency. This stuff cures really fast. So you only have about like a 10, maybe 20 minute working time max. So you do small batches. And that's why I like this particular product, is because it sets up really fast. So we will be able to clean and put down the penetrating sealer later today, which is great. So I just go ahead and put some. It's very similar to applying grout, which for me, I've done in the past, and is a pretty quick method. And the great thing about this stuff too is that because it's cement-based, the Credo DPS is going to make it to where this stuff, it strengthens the bond between the concrete slab and this product. It also, what it does is it's going to harden it even more. So this stuff, I mean, I use it on driveways, like I was saying. It's really strong and can be used under, like forklift weight or whatever. So that makes it pretty durable. And then the DPS just strengthens it even more. So it's meant to last. That's why it works great these type of situations. Now you want to just push it from side to side, really pushing it into the joints and making sure that they're pushed thick, because if you leave any excess area, then something pushes on that joint and it's going to push it down and make that joint pop. But this is, the more you push it in there, the longer it's going to last. See, and all this residue, after it dries, it will come off really easily with those sanding pads that I have to go and hit this floor with anyway. So probably won't even need any sponges to take up any excess, because we're going to be cleaning the floors and sanding them and stuff like that. So the sanding should get up anything. Put some excess back in there, mix it around. We're looking pretty good, still pretty thin. Let's add some more. So this whole process for 1,200 square feet at these expansion joint sizes, shouldn't take more than an hour and a half, 2 hours max to get all these, the backer rod in and the joints filled and all of that good stuff. So it moves pretty fast. Now the other option is using something after the floor is sealed. So you could go in, and after the floor is sealed, you can use a polyurethane. Now, putting it down before you seal, the thing is that that stuff is flexible. So it actually lasts really long time in the joints. And if you have some expansion, which is why the joints are in there, so the floor doesn't crack, the polyurethanes, they're more similar to a caulking. They're going to expand with the concrete and not crack out. But the thing is because they're flexible, if you seal over it, that sealer will come right up, because the sealer is hard and it will crack if you put it over a polyurethane. And then right where it cracks, right where that joint is, then that's a place where it's compromised. And then hypothetically, it could start peeling up from that little joint. And every single joint will have that, because eventually it's going to crack out of every joint because you filled them with something that's flexible. So if a customer wants a polyurethane, so you have to let the barrier completely cure, or whatever surface sealer you're using, and then you could go in and use the polyurethane. Traditionally, if I do it that way, I will run tape line along every joint so it doesn't leave any residue on the sealed concrete. As long as you use a high quality tape that isn't going to peel up your sealer, you could go in and then just caulk it with the polyurethane joint filler, and it actually works really well. So that's an option as well, especially if it's a newer floor. You know, it's probably going to settle some, so you want to probably do it in that way. But just know that it's going to take like an additional day to come back after the floor is completely cured, because even the barrier, most sealers, they say they're cured in 24 to 72 hours, but really most surface sealers that are urethane or polyurethane or polyaspartic, they do still cross-link for up to a week after they're applied. So you just want to come back like probably about a week later, then you have to tape line every joint, and then you could apply those, and it works really well for filling in all of those joints with something that will flex and will stay in the joint for much longer than an epoxy or cement-based fill or a polyaspartic or something like that, something that's hard like we're using today. And I just wanted to clarify that, since I got some pushback by all these experts in the concrete industry telling me that I wasn't doing it right with a 15-second video showing this process. So I wanted to, go ahead and let you guys know the thought pattern behind using a product like this, because it is very convenient, easy. Yeah, and even Lowe's carries the Mapei brand. See, it's starting to get thicker now. See that? But it's still good. It's still got enough liquid in there. We're good. But yeah, you could always get this stuff locally and in most locations. So it makes it a quick and easy option if you don't have time to order something that's a little more professional grade. And it's going to hold up pretty well, especially if you use it in conjunction with the Credo DPS. That really strengthens the joints and helps the bonding ability of products like this that are cement-based really bond to that original slab. So I just wanted to share that with you. This is a pretty easy process. It really makes the floor much easier to clean for the people that are going to be using the floor, and you could address as like this or an epoxy fill will eventually crack out. I mean, walk into any Costco or Walmart or wherever that have epoxy fills on their joints, and you'll see that they eventually crack as well. You could always just go back in and touch up those cracks with either like a caulking or a polyurethane or something like that. And problem solved. So this is a very cheap, easy way to fill in the expansion joints. Very quick way. And it will be fully cured by this afternoon, and I will be able to clean these floors and put down some Credo DPS and have this fully cured by the time I'm coming in and using the barrier surface sealer. Take tomorrow off, and then the following day I will be back in to apply our surface sealer. And everything will be gravy, and we will be good to go. See how easy these come up? The epoxy fills you have to really grind over to make sure that you get off all of the residue. These just quick once over. Look at that. They're already dry. Perfect. So easy. Okay, so now we are on to the final stages of the prep work. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna be running the machine with a hook and loop pad driver. So this is kind of like a Velcro style pad driver. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a pad or two on here. So probably just one pad. And then you put the sanding pad on. So the Home Depot by my house actually carries these in the rental department for their floor machines. So this is a sanding pad. It's a 60 grit. And what it will do is, unlike just sanding the concrete, we've already diamond grinded it, so we don't have to worry about that. Really, you don't go through too many pads. So I'll probably just use one pad for half of this 1,200 square feet, and then flip it and do the other pad, the other side of the pad for the other 600 square feet. And the idea is that this will cut all of those little fiberglass hairs off of the top of the concrete, making the concrete super smooth, and removing all of those, because those could be a nightmare, and they're going to stick in the sealer, and they're going to stick up, the floor is going to look hairy, it's going to look awful. So you got to get those fiberglass hairs up. So we're going to sand it with this, and before I do that, you can see that just sticks right to that thing. So you see that sticks right on. So we're also going to hit all the edges with an angle grinder with a diamond pad, and this one is 50 grit. I think this is a 4.5 or 5 inch, and what this is all right. So these are for stone and concrete grinding, okay? So this is not gonna be as aggressive as a some sort of cup wheel, you know, like these type of cup wheels. You know, these are pretty darn aggressive, okay? This one's aggressive, this one's really aggressive. And we don't wanna use those because what they're going to do is they're going to leave grind marks all over the edges, and it's going to look awful. So a 50 grit is still pretty aggressive, but this will get gooped up with the adhesives that are on the floor. So what I'm going to do, So I'm gonna go around the edges on my hands and knees and just scrape up every single edge with a razor blade to get up any adhesives that might be in any recessed areas. Now, there isn't too many recessed areas, but there are a couple here and there right on the edges. We'll go ahead and just scrape up any adhesives that are right on there. Hit the edge really quick with this diamond pad, and then after we're done sanding and edging, we're gonna start the cleaning process. So let's go ahead and get started. So as you can see, this is the area that has not been sanded yet, and you see the hairs sticking out. And then just move right over here. And all of the hairs are pulled out. The sanding just pulls those hairs out of the floor. Oh yeah, it's finally DPS time. All right, so what I'm gonna do now is, since I have this refrigeration unit that I have to move into this space, is I am going to seal this little L shape and kind of just seal it right up to the joint. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give that a couple minutes to dry, probably like 20 to 30 minutes. In the meantime, I've already dusted this square. I'm gonna go through the rest of the unit and do a final floor dusting with a microfiber floor mop. And then I am going to go next door and grab a cup of coffee, give it a couple minutes, then come back and then finish the sealing process, move this unit over onto here. You know, it's not the most ideal situation, but my client knows that this might leave a little bit of roller marks moving it in and out of the space. Luckily, barrier sets up so quickly that, you know, we can do this. Is it going to be perfect? Maybe, maybe not. I don't really know. We'll figure it out. But so I'm just going to give this about 20-30 minutes to cure. Do this L, give it a couple minutes to cure as I do a couple other things, and then move back and then finish up with the first coat of sealer. So let's go ahead and get started with that. First, I'll show you a little trick. So I'm going to be working with an 18-inch roller, and I have an old roller pan, and I'll show you a trick so you don't have to go through these, because these are pretty expensive and you could reuse it. And so what I do is I take a contractor bag and put that right in there. See, because what happens is each coat will kind of start it will kind of re-emulsify the sealer that's dried onto the pan, and then pieces will start peeling out. So what you could do is you could just replace this bag for every coat, and then every single time you won't have to worry about little pieces of the sealer getting stuck onto the roller and then getting stuck onto the floor. So you could do this little trick. Personally, I think it's worth the handful of bags that we might use today to make sure that the floor comes out perfect. And there you go. Nice little trick with the 18-inch dust or 18-inch roller. So let's get started. As you can see, I moved that little unit back into place. We're just going to roll our way out from the back end all the way up to the front. Now this particular unit, it has a back door. So what I'll do is, after letting it sit for approximately an hour in between coats, I will go around to that back door and start in the back door, then work my way out to the front door, and so on. So this way, I'm giving it maximum amount of time to cure. And I'm starting back here and working my way out, starting here, working my way out. So it has proper time for curing in between coats. Now, barrier is a urethane-based surface sealer, so it's good for indoors and outdoors. It comes in gloss or matte finish. The matte finish is a little more durable and considered a non-slip. The gloss is not quite, it doesn't quite make the specifications for being a non-slip coating. So, but we're doing gloss today. And the idea with this urethane is that you want to just make sure that you're rolling it on, but you back roll it a little bit, okay? Now this product is supposed to go on thin, and you do more coats to build up the durability. So unlike an epoxy that you could pour thicker, or some other like a polyaspartic or something like that could go on a lot thicker, this is meant to go on thin. And by doing more thin coats, it will actually be more chemical and scratch resistant than if you just did like one thick coat. Plus, if you do one thick coat, most likely it's not going to cure right. So that's not a good idea anyway. So that's the kind of the concept of this particular sealer, is just doing more coats. Traditionally, with a surface sealer like this, you're going to want to do at least 2 coats For this particular commercial space, we're gonna do 3 coats. And I would say the most you really wanna do would be 4 coats. So if I'm doing like a driveway or something like that, I'll go ahead and I'll do, you know, like 4 coats on there, because I know that it's gonna have a lot of, you know, vehicle traffic. It's heavy vehicles driving on it. And, you know, I want that durability to last. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and do like 4 coats on something like that. But on something like this, you know, most of my clients I'm doing 3 coats for. Okay, so, and what the trick is with this sealer is that you want to keep back rolling it, okay? And you'll see that it comes out, it almost looks like foam or little air bubbles. And if you could get a shorter nap roller, then you'll see less of that happening. But the idea is that you want to just keep back rolling, making sure that the back rolling it will make sure that you're getting into every little nook and cranny in the concrete, so you're not missing any spots. You're really smoothing out that sealer. And the idea is you want to get all those little air bubbles out, because those air bubbles can cure in the sealer and leave it like textured and cloudy looking. Okay, so you definitely don't want that. So you want to just keep back rolling. Now, the colder it is, the longer it takes to set up. So say if I was applying this and it was, you know, 60 degrees in here, the idea would be, you know, it would be pretty easy for me to go ahead and just be quick and roll it on, back roll it once, and then move on. And if there's any little bubbles, if there's air bubbles in there or something like that, not a big deal, because it's just going to self-level anyway. Well, today I have the heat up high. I have the heater blazing at 74 degrees, so that each coat will cure very quickly. Now, what that also means is that this is going to set up pretty quickly, and that I don't want to allow those air bubbles to stick in the sealer. I want to make sure that I'm back rolling them out before I move on to the next space. So that is what I'm going to be doing. So I just remove the excess from the roller pad. Oh goodness, don't fall. All right, thank goodness. All right. That thing looks like it's hanging right off. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and spread this around, because once again, they call it a thin to win. You wanna go thin to win. You wanna have a good, beautiful looking sealer. You wanna spread this out. Make sure that you're putting it on nice and thin, okay? You could even go back and pick up some of that excess sealer over here, move it along, start blending all this in. All right, and now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lightly back roll all of this. Making sure that I'm hitting everything right. That sealer is really getting a good bond. And I'm just lightly back rolling. Back rolling it into the next, or the last area that I just did. So it really goes down seamless. And you don't see any roller marks or stroke marks from the roller. This is gonna look beautiful. Nice glossy finish. The barrier is not a high gloss. Concrete Chemistries is gonna be releasing a super high gloss, more durable top coat here in 2023, late 2023. But at this point, right now, this is their gloss sealer. And I use this stuff all the time. This is my go-to for interior and exterior. I have an upsell if someone wants like something more durable. We have the micro shine, which is a top coat that you could put over a sealed floor, and that stuff works really well. And you can put it over the barrier after the barrier is cured. Let's put some of that product right here, move it across. And you can put it over a sealed surface. So you let this cure for a couple days, and then you come in with the micro shine, and the micro shine makes it even more chemical resistant and is considered slip resistant when tested. So, I offered that to this client. He declined. He didn't want to spend the extra money on product and labor. And we were in kind of a time crunch this time around. So, we're just going with the barrier. And if they have to have it cleaned and resealed, like 5 years down the road or something, they'll cross that bridge when they get to it. So that's quite all right. This will hold up pretty well. This is a commercial space, so it should hold up pretty well. You'll probably get, at the very least, at least 2 years, but I would guess probably about 5 years before this is going to have to get resealed. So barrier holds up pretty darn well. Holds up a lot better than like an acrylic would or a lot of other sealers that you're going to get from the paint store or from Home Depot, or nothing against Home Depot. I love Home Depot and Sherwin-Williams and all of these companies. I go there all the time, but I definitely don't buy my sealers there. I'll go and get my roller pads there. I got this extension roller there. I got the paint tray from Home Depot, but definitely not go in there to buy my sealers. So, and as you see, I'm just kind of back rolling it, making sure that's smoothing out. Then I'm just going to move my paint tray and keep working my way out. It's looking solid. Barrier darkens up the concrete, not as much as a solvent-based sealer would, but it does darken it up a little bit. As you can see in that first L that's already dried, it does darken it a little bit, so it does enhance the color somewhat. So let's keep going. Yeah, not bad, huh? Looking pretty good. So this is after the second coat. As you can see, it's building up the sheen pretty well. Okay, each coat is taking approximately an hour, hour and 15 minutes for, you know, about 1,200 square feet, give or take. So yeah, this is looking really, really nice. And we'll go ahead and get started with this third coat. So I got this thing that's been a lot of fun. Yay. What we'll do is I went and when I was doing the second coat, I had put a coat down, and then when I was doing the second coat, that second coat that I put in this area had already set up, so I did a third coat just right in here, all right? So that little corner has 3 coats down. So we are gonna move this thing into that spot right now and just leave it and then work our way around it. So if you could see though, I mean, the sheen is pretty good blending in the different coats. So that's why you really want to do at least 2 coats, if not 3. So if there's imperfections in the rolling out of each coat, they're going to just blend in more and more and make it look that much better each coat. So that's why I highly recommend going through and doing 3 coats. It's the professional way to do it. I always do 3 coats for my clients and it always looks amazing. So let's get started. So this came out nice, didn't it? As a DIY project, this is totally doable. It's not something that you need to get done professionally, but you can make your floor look just as good as this by following the instructions in this video. Getting a rental machine from someplace like Home Depot or something like that, you can make your floors look this good. It's really not too hard. So I wish you good luck on your project.
Come rain or come shine.